Hey everyone, do you know the difference between Bob Ross and Eric Brennan? Bob Ross has talent.
He had hair, too.
That too, Josh. Now back to the show.
And here we are again, episode 157 of the RPM podcast. It is November 5th at 5:22 p.m. We're starting early tonight. We're a day late, but at least we're starting early. We usually get going around 8 o'clock. We're doing it early today. I'm Scott Riggleman in Manchester, New Jersey at the Edge of Divorce Motorsports studio. And we have Joshua Matthews down in Waretown, New Jersey at the Matthews Family Studio. How are you doing, Josh?
Good. I finished chemo Sunday, so I'm other than I still feel effects, I'm doing pretty good.
So that's it. 2 years. You're done with chemo finally?
Yeah. Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah. The reason we're starting the show early is because you have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. What's your doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, Josh?
Another bone marrow biopsy. Fun stuff. I know you're jealous. I know.
Better you than me, man. Better you than me. All right, so I had a very exciting race weekend. I went up to Bethel Motor Speedway and got the race up there Saturday and Sunday. So what we decided to do tonight is we decided to have one of the people from the management team from Bethel Motor Speedway come on and talk about the weekend. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Mike Hager. Mike Hager, how are you?
Good, Scott. Thanks for having me on the show here. And God bless you with the whole chemo thing. I'm glad to hear that as well.
Thank you.
Well, Mike, I know I'm still tired from the weekend. Man, what a lot of racing up there at Bethel Motor Speedway. How you feeling today?
Well, I'm good today, but yesterday I definitely was dragging my tail. And, not only do I do all that stuff up at the track, but then you have to write a story and meet deadlines and put in results and things like that. And so there was plenty of work for me to do all day Sunday. So Monday was a good day to really get tired there. And then today I'm feeling a lot better and getting back in the wind of things.
All right, just to let everybody know that Bethel Motor Speedway is up in White Lake, New York. It's in Bethel. It's also in Bethel, the same town that Woodstock was in, the original Woodstock, the 1969 Woodstock. The track has had a few different names. It was built in 1960 as a quarter-mile paved oval. I remember it as Sullivan County Speedway. It was also called Cunningham Speedway. It was called White Lake Speedway, and now it's called Bethel Motor Speedway. Did I miss any names of that track up there, Mike?
Yeah, it's been a track of many names. It had Catskill Mountain Speedway. I wasn't sure if you said that one.
No, I didn't say that one. I don't remember that. Do you know how long
that
ago
was
that
a very short-lived name.
Okay.
I think it was only for 1 year, maybe a little bit the second year they did it for. And then there was also, I want to say it was Sullivan. Not Sullivan County Speedway, but Sullivan Speedway.
Speedway.
And I think that only lasted no more than 2 races. So that was a real short-lived one.
Scott, you you have a note section on your book there? You could write that in.
Yeah, I'll fill that in. Well, actually, this book's so old it's not even. It just has Cunningham, White Lake, and Sullivan County. It's not even up to the Bethel years yet. So
yeah.
I like the name.
For the most part, it was White Lake Speedway from the 60s up to about I want to say towards the end of the 80s, and then it started changing names. But White Lake Speedway never ran all the way through it. It always had some years it was on hiatus where it didn't have nobody running it. And then it got to be Sullivan County Speedway, and then eventually it became Cunningham Speedway, then Catskill Mountain, then Sullivan Speedway, and then eventually here we are today, and it's Bethel Motor Speedway.
Was it always a paved racetrack, or was it ever dirt?
It was dirt the first year, and from what I hear from the old timers, it was a horrendous track surface, and it was extremely dusty. But the reason why that track got built was there was a track in Beach Lake, Pennsylvania, which was outside of Honesdale.
Okay.
And that track got closed up, and one of the local competitors there, he was a well driller, and he lived in Bethel, New York. His name was Charlie Wells, So he convinced another local property owner right where that track is today to carve out a track. I think it was some farmland then at that point. And then that's how it got started there. It's really a replacement track to Beach Lake Speedway on the other side of the border there in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow, that's a cool little side story. We really appreciate you telling us that. It's one of the smaller tracks I've ever raced on. I don't think you can get much smaller than they are. It's listed as a quarter mile, but it's a small quarter mile. But I tell you what, when I got down on that racetrack, I couldn't believe how smooth it was. That pavement was like perfectly smooth. I'm assuming the pavement is not that old on that racetrack.
The track used to be a little bit bigger, but in 2010, I want to say it was, Joe Graff wanted to repave it, and he added a inner lane. And it used to be you would race almost right up along the outside fence where the marbles were. So when that inner lane got in, it kind of moved everything a little bit lower.
Right.
But for the most part, it is a tight quarter mile, and I want to say a lot of that pavement there was put in 2010, and then the previous pave job was in 1998, right in the initial stage of Kenneunga Speedway, where Dave Rocket had invested some money and had it paved there, the whole track. So if it's not 10 years old, it's 20 years old, the pavement.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's smooth, though. It is a smooth racetrack. I was very surprised how smooth it was. It's actually even smoother than Wall Stadium. Wall Stadium's starting to get a few cracks and bumps in it, but Wall Stadium's, I always consider it one of the smoothest racetracks. Kenneunga was Bethel was very smooth too, and I did enjoy racing up there. The guardrail's a little iffy, though. I mean, the guardrail could use a little work, but Wall Stadium has the same problem with their guardrail too. But what a great weekend up there, man. We had perfect weather. It was cold out, Josh, but it was like one of those days where it was cold out, but the sun was hot. You know what I'm saying?
So you stand in the sun,
had to have a jacket on. Yeah, you had to have a jacket on to keep warm. But meanwhile, your face was getting sunburned. You know what I'm saying? It was like it was one of those days, but it was a perfectly crystal clear day. It was a little bit colder on Sunday, and it was cloudy. And we did have a couple little sprinkles for a second, but it cleared right up. And I tell you what, man, there was a ton of race cars there. They had divisions, and I love these end of the season races where they open the rules up so other people from other tracks can come, and it seemed to really pay off for you guys at Bethel. Mike, I mean, was that one of the better car counts you had all year long up there?
I would say by far, as far as the enduro goes, it was at least more than double than our highest one. I think the second highest one we did 2 weeks ago. And I want to say that had somewhere between maybe 15 to 20 cars in it. So we more than doubled it. And then we did a few enduro dashes, which are more 30, 40 lap enduros.
Right.
And those generally didn't outnumber any more than 15 cars. So we did get a strong contingent of competitors due to the open rules, due to other tracks being closed. If Evergreen had not rescheduled to that date with their big weekend, we would even had more cars in the enduro. So there was a lot of outside cars came in, and they ended up having a great time there. The track is very smooth. In fact, those micro stocks that race down at Wall and at Mahoning, they loved the track. If it wasn't so far away, they'd be there every week. Those little modified looking micro stocks.
Yeah, Josh, they're the cars that Tom and Robin Irvin race that he's talking about. They race on the Sunday series at Wall Stadium on the little inner oval we have at Wall Stadium. And a good friend of the show, Tom Irvin, and his wife, Robin Irvin, who Robin also writes for the Aerial Racing News as well. And she's always listens to our podcast, and they got a great little thing going with those little, I always call them mini modifieds, so you know what I'm saying? They're pretty cool. They've been around forever. I remember as a kid, they used to race at New Egypt Speedway when New Egypt was a quarter mile asphalt track, and they race at Mahoney Valley. The Wagner family's real big in them. Don Wagner and all his family are real big into them racing those cars too.
Yeah, in fact, once a year we do a Pine Brook Speedball reunion night,
right?
Where we have a lot of the former racers from Pine Brook, which was like a little, I want to say that was like a tenth of a mile asphalt track. It wasn't too far from Flemington. I forget the name.
Yeah, matter of fact, I just towed a car last week to the Pine Brook area. And when I used to go up there 10, 15 years ago, the track was actually still there. It was underneath a little bit of a rubble because when they milled one of the highways that went by there, it's Route 46 that goes by there, the state dumped the millings in the infield of the racetrack, but you could still see the racetrack. Now it's a Home Depot. I drove by there the other day. It's a Home Depot.
Yeah.
That track was famous for the cars you were just talking about, that Tom Irvin races. Plus, it was big for the TQ midgets. That was their home track for a while. That started some good careers like that. Lenny Boyd, famous modified driver. He still has a TQ midget. I actually seen him walking around the pits at Bethel when I was up there. Lenny Boyd won a lot of races there in the TQ car before he moved up into the modified division.
Yeah, you're correct. Lenny Boyd was there. I want to say he owns the Ryan Tidman car. Don't quote me on it.
The 1B. I know he's had a few different drivers in it, but I'm pretty sure Ryan Tinman does drive that car now.
Yes, and so the Pine Brook night is generally we have all the TQ midgets come, the various different clubs, and a lot of former stars from there and officials and stuff come up, and it makes for a good night for those guys. And they love the smoothness of the track, and then the guardrails they're definitely aging. They date back to, I want to say, to the mid '70s. And for a lot of these open cockpit guys, there is some concern there. And we definitely have that on one of the top things next to fix at Bethel Motor Speedway is to get some of these guardrails replaced and put some better ones in to make the race in there more safe and a little bit better for the racer.
Right. Another thing I noticed that you had there was slingshots. Have you been racing slingshots there much? I know they're big down in Pennsylvania on the dirt. They also race them in the indoor stuff down here in Atlantic City. And I think Bethel would be a perfect size racetrack for like the Tobias slingshots.
That's something that we're definitely considering. What you saw there was the third ever race of the slingshots at Bethel. For our first ever Novemberfest weekend last year, we had about, I want to say there was about 12 or so of those cars that came, and they put on an awesome race. And it's really a perfect fit. And the guys that drive those cars, especially the all-star drivers, they really enjoy it. And they love the smoothness of the track as well. And it would be a good fit. We haven't scheduled a whole lot of them because there's a neighboring track in Hamlin, Pennsylvania that runs them on Saturday nights. So we don't want to really impede too much on their main division there. So we try to stay away from that and not create a conflict. But we do like the slingshots and how they race at Bethel. And I do see a future of more races going on there.
Yeah, I see a lot about that Hamlin racetrack. I'm friends with Morgan Rochelle on Facebook, and I see her and her family race there. How far is Hamlin from Bethel?
It really isn't that far if you know the backwoods roads. I want to say it's no more than 45 minutes away from there.
Now, you say they race on Saturdays, and you race on Saturday nights as well. I know we raced on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Does the town give you guys trouble if you want to have like a midweek show or a Sunday show, or can you race any day of the week you wanted to?
The town is pretty into us currently at Speedway. We got a few local neighbors that aren't crazy about the track, but the current town board and the mayor are very supportive of us. But they like to do things by the T. So generally what we have to do is we have to put in the dates that we want to race on well in advance. Normally that's going in December, right around the holidays. And we try and plot everything out. There is some stuff in the code where it makes it extremely difficult for us to do a race on a weekday. We do practices once a month up there on Thursday afternoons and early evening. But for the most part, that's the only thing that's ever been approved as far as midweek racing. We could probably get away with a Friday show here and there, but really the town is the most into the Saturdays and the Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, no, Saturdays and Sundays is fine. I remember a few years back, I thought I heard someone through the grapevine that you guys can only operate like like 11 hours a week, and it was like from 12 o'clock on Saturday to 11 o'clock at night, and you had to be done, and you're only allowed to do it. So it's hard to run a business when you can only be open one day a week. You know what I'm saying? I like the idea of your Thursday practices, though. Me and Josh always talk about that too. How even at like Wall Stadium, they should have like a Wednesday night practice night where from like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. When people get out of work, they can go to the track for a few hours and get laps in. Do you guys do that every Thursday?
We do it about once a month.
Okay.
Depending on the weather, because to believe it or not, in order to keep our good neighbor policy, that's the one thing that the neighbors dislike the most is the noises on a weeknight.
Right.
So that's the compromise that we have is that we're allowed to do it basically once a month, and there's only a certain amount of cars that can go on the track at one time, and then if it does rain out, we're not allowed to reschedule it. It's just a lost date. So it's something that we've accepted and we're okay with it, and we're into building better relationship with the town and getting the community more involved with that speedway. So that way, it's something that's recognized by the whole local community and not just the regional racing community in our area.
Mike, what would be the cost for a racer to show up there on a Thursday and practice their car?
Generally, what we do is we charge it by the car. Okay, so if you were to bring up one car, you're going to pay $75. It gives you about a 3-hour block of time with about maybe 6 or 7 other cars, and I think we're allowed to let 2 cars out at a time, sometimes 3 at the most. And then whoever comes, there's no charge. So you could come with a crew of 20 people. We're not charging the people. We're just charging for the car.
See, Josh, isn't that perfect? We always talk about how, like I always have crew guys that want to, try my car out or take the car out. And like Josh hasn't raced in a few years because he's been sick. And like he's just said, he's getting over chemo. I'd love to have time to throw him in the car and let him practice the car. But on a Saturday, when you're getting ready to race, everything's so time consuming, and you're always pressed for time and being rushed to the next thing. It'd be perfect to go take your race, go over to the track on a Thursday night and let your crew guys take it out, and maybe one of your sponsors want to jump in the car and try it out. I think having a Thursday practice once a month is a great idea.
Scott, that or something like what they do with the quarter midgets, where they let the kids try it out to see if it's something they want to do before they invest in a car and all the safety equipment and everything that goes with it. It'd be a good way to let new people just, see if they want to do it.
And Mike, on that note, haven't you guys even had like the Rusty Wallace driving experience there and stuff like that?
That was the first year that we did the Rusty Wallace experience. In fact, that management crew that runs that Rusty Wallace thing contacted us, and it was there was no risk at all having that come in there. So that was the first year for it. And I think we actually had some local trail race that did the Rusty Wallace experience. And then there was some few racers that I never knew. I didn't know them at all, and they did it. And a few of them were involved with the Monticello Motor Club, which is like more of a prestigious, if you want to call it, type road course that's located maybe 5-10 minutes from the track. So it was like a combination of those three, and they kind of brought in these asphalt late models, kind of like a car carrier trailer. And
they've been to Wall Stadium before. Josh, you actually drove one of them, didn't you?
Yeah, I got to give the ride-alongs, which was fun. It's really fun when you forget to move your foot from the clutch to the brake pedal.
You press the clutch instead of the brake pedal?
I did that once, yes.
And Mike, that's another reason why I don't let Josh take my car out on a Saturday night.
And Scott, do you want to tell him the third reason you don't let me take your car out?
He one of our friends let him drive one of his spare cars at Turkey Derby a couple years back, and they had a 3-car team, and Josh actually wrecked his teammate in practice, early morning practice. So That's another reason why Josh can't drive my car.
Yep.
So are you gonna will you have the Rusty Wallace driving experience back next year, you think?
I would say so. If they contact us and they want to do it again, or I don't see why we wouldn't do it. It's not a home run; it's a single. But hey, you got to take what you can get in this business, and I much rather hit a single than anything else. Than not hit nothing. So
I'd tell you what, when they do it at Wall Stadium, they actually get a good crowd there. I mean, they get a good amount of people there renting rides and doing the experience. I was surprised how many people showed up there to do it. It was pretty successful.
Advertised a little bit better because I know we have the Green Flag experience, and that's a very good program, but I think it's not advertised much outside of the racing community. So I don't know what kind of crowd they normally get. I know they did a really good Groupon deal a while back, and that got them a lot of people. But the Rusty Wallace thing, I think it might reach a little bit farther for whatever reason. And yeah, they definitely had a good crowd because when I wasn't driving people around, I was helping buckle people in all day.
Yeah, there was a line of people there. All right, I just want to get back to what happened last weekend up at Bethel Motor Speedway. It was called Novemberfest, which I love that name, Novemberfest. I've raced up at Hudson Speedway at the end of October. They call it Pumpkin Fest. I just think it's a real cool name. It was called Novemberfest. It was Saturday, November 2nd, and Sunday, November 3rd last weekend. They had all types of racing. Josh, when I signed in, Mike was actually the guy that signed me in when I got there, and he looked right at me. He's like, Scott, you can basically race 3 times today if you want. I said, well, how's that? He's like, there's a street stock shootout called the Sullivan 100, and that's a race I've heard about forever, So I'm like, yeah, I want to race the street stock Sullivan 100 race. And then this is all with the same car, same tires, same everything, Josh. Don't change nothing. Just go racing. And then he's like, then we got something called a full fender frenzy 50-lap race for $500 to win. And it was pretty much anything but fenders could race. And I said, well, I probably won't do that because I'm here with an Enduro car. And then he said, well, there's only a couple late models here and a couple street stocks are racing. The rest of them are all basically 4-cylinder cars. I'm like, yeah, sign me up for that one too. Then he's like, oh, and then we have a non-winners race. I'm like, I got like 93 feature wins in my career. I'm pretty sure I'm overqualified for a non-winners race. He's like, yeah, but you never won at Bethel. It's a non-Bethel winners race. I'm like, he's like, that's a 15-lapper. You want to run that too? I'm like, yeah, sure. Sign me up for that too. So that was 3 features. Then there was 2 heat races, Josh. I had to run a heat race for the 100-lap street stock race, and then I had to run a heat race for the full fender frenzy race. So I raced a lot that day, and I'm glad Mike talked me in. I'm glad Mike talked me into running that full fender frenzy race because that race was a lot of fun. I think 18 cars started it. I finished 7th, and he was right. There was a couple late models there, a couple street stocks there, and the rest were 4-cylinders in Maine. It was fun racing that race. Mike, how often do you do that full fender frenzy race? Is that just a November race?
It's just a November race that we've been doing. It was something that hadn't been done for many years. It's kind of a throwback race. But what really got us into doing that again is you have these guys from Riverhead that run these figure 8 races, and then you have some other guys that are contacting us from dirt tracks and stuff, and they want to run the track, but they just can't. They can't get in there because of the rules and stuff. And it reminded me of that full fender frenzy race that we had done years and years ago. And it was always a very popular race. And what it is it becomes a diverse race because there's a lot of traffic going on at different speeds, a lot of navigating. And this year was probably one of the successful ones I've seen. I think you're right. 18 cars started the race, and there was very few cautions, and it became a driver's track out there because you had to weave in and out of a lot of lap traffic, and you had to think what was up ahead. And you had maybe, I think it was about 3 or 4 guys that really seriously dishing it out there for the win. And the lap traffic was either going to make or break you.
And the thing, too, with the lap traffic that even makes it more difficult up there, Josh, is they run no mirrors, no radios. So you're really relying on the flagger. And I tell you what, the flagger was working his butt off with that move over flag, letting us know when the leaders were there and when the leaders weren't there, it was a cool race, and it is cool how it does work itself out. Where there is faster cars and slower cars on track, but like Mike said, there was no accidents, no cautions because of it. Everybody just knew what race car they had and everybody knew how to race it. It was a great race. It was a lot of fun. The 50 laps actually went by pretty quick. That was definitely something I was glad I did that weekend. And did a street stock win that race or did a late model win that race?
Who won that race? His name is Kenny Hyde, and he's a figure 8 racer at Riverhead. And he's really into that race. He usually budgets to run that race every year because it's a family thing with him. His father ran figure 8, and he used to come up and race the figure 8 races years ago. And he really wanted to do the same thing. And I know winning that race on Saturday was a big thing for him. That was his first career win at Bethel, and I'm sure he was thinking of his father, and he had his young son there, and it was good to see him win that race because he's been a faithful follower of that for not only his racing career but his father before him.
Did they used to do figure 8s at Bethel?
No. The figure 8s were always known to come up there for special races.
Okay.
But there was never a figure 8 course that was on Bethel. But they seem to run well on our quarter-mile bull ring.
Yeah, back when I was a kid, when New Egypt was a quarter-mile track, my father raced there in a modern stock division, and the modern stocks were very similar to the Riverhead figure 8 cars. So same thing. Later in the year when Riverhead was done with their points and everything for the figure 8 guys, they would come race at the oval at New Egypt Speedway as a modern stock. So, they got to race as a regular oval track car and not a figure 8 car.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes New Egypt cars would come up north to Bethel and run some special races too. You might recognize a name from New Jersey. His name was Joe Scarborough. And
yeah, I remember Joe. He had that white and fluorescent red and blue. Kind of looked like Derek Cope's Pure Later 10 car that he won Daytona with. It was a number 37 Camaro. He used to run at New Egypt and run up at Sullivan County too.
Yeah, he was one of the top runners there when he would come up there. I think they did run weekly up there for a while. But both him and his son Joey were both always top competitors when they would come up there, and they logged in quite a few wins there.
They actually ended up moving down south, and I think they were running like an Impkin style modified down there, like a stock front clip modified down south, and they did very well down south too. I think it was called the Rolling Thunder Modified Tour down there. I think Joey actually won the championship with those guys one time down there.
Running some type of stock clip modified model down there.
That's kind of like your modifieds up there. It's a little bit of a mix of like the Troyer type cars and like the stock clip cars. You're like one of the very last racetracks in our area that run the asphalt modifieds with stock clips still. And it was pretty cool watching it too, because you had the Troyer type cars out there, but I'm pretty sure a stock clip modified ended up winning that race up there this weekend.
You're correct. That car is a stock clip modified. It was actually a car that was built in the late 90s, and Zacharias in Central New York. It raced up there with them. I'm not sure exactly if they built it or if they had someone fabricate it for them. It was a top winner there, and then eventually ended up at Bethel. And the guy that won the race, his name is, he's been racing there since the early 90s there. One quick funny story there is Area Auto Racing News always did a contest or kept track of the region's top winners. They still do it today. They have this little column usually in the corner of a page. So one year in the early 90s, right, Steve Conklin was winning just about every race at Bethel. So it had his name as the top asphalt modified winning driver, against guys like Reggie Ruggiero, Mike Stefanik, the Fuller brothers. They're all chasing Steve Conklin throughout the year, and then by the end of the season, Steve Conklin had the top one.
Yeah, I remember watching that too, because I know John Blewett the third. He used to try to always win that too. It was always guys like Teddy Christopher up there, and people like Mike Stefanik and all those guys. And John would towards the end of the year, he'd be like, I got to win 2 more times. I'm trying to beat Teddy in this all-time win listing. So he'd go out to like a Chemung or something like that and try to get a win out that way. And I remember the B modified cars out at Chemung, like you were saying with the Zacharias and stuff. They were all stock clip cars out there too. I noticed one modified was missing there that I've always seen in the papers, and like you said with Steve, he's been racing there forever. Was that number 9 car? I can't think of the guy's name, but he doesn't race with you guys anymore.
No, he was there on Sunday. He wasn't in the race because he had 3 shooter. That's a very unique car too. His name is John Cody. He's from Danbury, Connecticut. In fact, he got his racing started at the famous Danbury Race Arena. And then he bounced around to a lot of different tracks up in New England. He was at Plainville and Waterford, and I'm not sure if he had done Stafford, but I know he had done Claremont. And then he was at Riverside Park in Agawam, Massachusetts. So Riverside Park, I want to say, closed up in 1999, and long and behold, John Cody ended up at Bethel, and he's been racing there faithfully ever since. His chassis, I believe, is like a 1981 chassis. It's a stock clip car.
It almost looks like an old Evans chassis with a stock clip on the front of it. Like the cage itself looks like a Richie Evans style cage.
Yeah, it was built in that era. So it's going to remind you of a Richie Evans type asphalt mod. And he's logged in over 120 feature wins. I've lost count. He's probably up around 125, 128 now, maybe even higher. He's a real veteran driver. Real sportsman out there as well. And he's definitely an old school racer. I remember when he first came up there, he was wearing the open face helmet, no gloves, none of that stuff, when he first came up there. It was pretty fun to stay. A real throwback racer.
He did bring that car down to Wall Stadium a couple of times to run with the sportsman division when they first started at Wall Stadium. And I remember looking at that car, and like you said, it was real unique. He had like a cantilever spring set up in the front of the car, kind of like an Indycar, Josh, that I thought was pretty neat. That was totally like, there wasn't another car in the pits with a setup like that. And I thought that was pretty cool that he was thinking outside the box like that. And another thing I noticed on his car that I thought was a little crazy was the reservoirs for the brake fluid were mounted like close to the roof by the windshield, and he had tubes running down to like the master cylinder. Like I don't know, he just had like the reservoirs for his brake pedals way up high for some reason. I just thought that was
if you think about it, it's now you definitely have gravity feed, and then two, he has that much more hose to fill with brake fluid. So if you get a hole, you can run that many more laps.
Yeah. But that was it is still today a very unique race car, and he does very well with it. And he's a guy that just definitely does it his way. You know what I'm saying? And he thinks outside the box, and that's what's kind of cool about that division you have up there. You can build something a little bit different than what most guys build. And I always thought that was a pretty neat division.
Yeah, he's a good mechanic. He builds his own engine. He's the master of our track. He's definitely earned that title, and it's good to have him there. He had a good season. He ended up third in the final point standings. Last year, he won the title by 1 point. So he's just a very good driver. He's wily. He's sly. And he's good in the pits, always trying to help guys out, and he's dependable. He's the first guy at the Speedway every week in line. So we're glad. I hate to see a Speedway like Riverside Park close, but if there's one benefit out of it, is Bethel got a guy like John Cody.
I tell you what, we're in the same boat down here. It's almost like a couple racetracks had to close in New Jersey for one to be successful. So everybody had to go to one racetrack, and Wall Stadium's been the sole survivor down there. And I think that's why it's thriving now, is because we had Flemington and New Egypt and Wall. You're spreading everybody out between three racetracks. Now, of course, New Egypt went dirt, Flemington closed. So everybody races Wall now. If you want to race an asphalt car, you got to run Wall in New Jersey. So it kind of helped it out a little bit. So when one track closes, it is sad, but another track might survive because of it. Another famous race car I saw there, and we were talking about in the pre-show, was a guy with the same last name as you. It was that orange 65 Oldsmobile that's been around forever, and he racing the Enduro with us. Can you tell us a little bit about that race car and that racing family?
Yeah, my brothers and I have been at that game for a very long time. We grew up as kids at Orange County Fair Speedway. And then, of course, not only were we there, but whenever my father would have a chance, he would take us to Accord Speedway on Friday nights. And when Middletown was not racing on Saturdays, he would take us to White Lake Speedway, which always seemed to be racing no matter how much it was raining or how cold it was. I always just remember being there, and usually you were very cold or wet or something, but I remember being there, and my father would take us to Mockatech Speedway often as well. So we learned at an early age not to discriminate with tracks, to move around, and to try and really, learn each track and craft it and win. And that's what we did. We got involved in this car. We actually seen it real cheap for sale. We bought it for $65.
Is that where the number 65 came from?
In the driveway. Well, it's one of two things. We bought the car for $65, and it was a 1965 Oldsmobile. So that kind of honed us in to make that our signature number. And then as our cars multiplied, we started using different numbers, 56 and 8.5 and some other numbers, the 36R I remember you used. So, but 65, that's our main number. And that car was built in 1990 to be in an enduro car at Orange County Fair Speedway. And then after we were done building the thing, and we had put our sweat and tears and elbow grease into it, we decided it was too nice and that it fit the street stock rules. So, hey, why not? Let's run street stock before we do enduro. And we went out there and we did not know anything. It was bad. In fact, we got black flag for going too slow.
Even though it looked like a street stock, it wasn't quite a street stock. Maybe you should try the enduro race.
Yeah, the guys, they were doing a lot more than we knew. And then, so then we started looking at the other cars, how they were built, asking dumb questions. And then right away, we started changing things around the car. And then 2 years later, we were able to start picking up feature wins. The first one was the hardest one, of course. And then we followed it up the following week with another win. And then it started becoming a regular occurrence. And then not only did we get good there, but we started branching out, running Accord and running White Lake, Bethel. And then we started getting more involved with metric cars and street stocks, building those. And then we were one of the first followers of that Mr. Dirt Street Stock series that eventually became the Mr. Dirt Pro Stock series. And we ran that. And then our trusty Oldsmobile finally became an enduro car that it intended to. And I remember, winning quite a few enduro races, racing against guys like Earl Paulus and the Salerno brothers, and going to many different tracks running enduro. And it's run at least one race every year since 1990. And we were able to keep that streak going this past Sunday. We got about 20 laps in, and then we had to pull off. It lost oil pressure, so we had to pull off the track. And
is that a Chevy motor in there, or does it have an Oldsmobile motor in the car?
Right now, it's got a Chevy crate motor in it.
Really?
Yep. But it was a used crate that we had purchased, and it looks like somebody had been in there monkeying around with it. Anyway, it was a bargain basement deal. We put it in there quick, and we fixed the timing chain on it. But when we went out, it ran good, but it just it didn't make the duration. You, on the other hand, I think you started right behind it, and I think I'm going to nickname you Iron Man for when you come up there because of all the laps that you ran over the course of the weekend, all with the same car, and it never broke down, never had a drop out of a race. Definitely that's a big plus in my book to have such a durable car like that can do that.
Yeah, I did a lot of maintenance on that car before I went up there. That's not, it's my race car, but that's the car my wife races on dirt when we do the dirt enduros at Big Diamond Speedway in Grandview and Bridgeport with the Outlaw Enduro Series. And I never get a chance to drive it, so I never know how the car's doing it because on the dirt they don't give us no practice or nothing, and we just roll out for the enduros. And I'm driving my car and she's driving hers. So I said, this is a perfect time for me to bring this car up here and drive it and try it out and see how it runs and everything. The only thing I did to switch it over from dirt to asphalt was put a sway bar on it. When I run dirt, I take the sway bar off, and when I run asphalt, I put the sway bar on. And I tell you what, the car ran great. Like I said, I did a lot of maintenance before we went out there. It did have an 8-gallon cell and an older fuel cell I never really liked anyway, so I did buy a brand new 15-gallon cell, and we put it in the car, and I greased all the wheel bearings and changed the oil, and I put better axles in it because it had stock axles in it. I put a set of Moser axles in it, and I packed the front wheel bearings. The only thing I did to that car the whole weekend up there was, I ran all day on Saturday, so Sunday morning I just changed the brake pads on the front of it, so I knew I had enough brake pads to make it the 100 laps, but the car did run good. I think I did figure out how many laps I completed up there in competition. I think it was 285 laps, not including practice. With a 100-lap street stock race, a 50-lap full fender frenzy race, the 100-lap enduro, the 15-lap non-winners race, and 2 10-lap heat races. I think it came out to 285 laps of competition I did up there in a weekend, Josh, with the same car, same tires, same fuel. It just goes to show you, like, sometimes rules that hurt racing because of the car count. When I pulled up and Mike told me at the gate, he's like, "Hey, with that car, you can run all these races and not change one thing." I'm like, "Sign me up, Mike. I'll do it." I thought it was great. It was a cool weekend.
Scott, how did your tires fare?
My tires did great, Josh. I chose the option of using a Cooper Cobra DOT tire, and they held up all weekend. And they're still fine. They're still in good shape. I'm going to put them back in the rack for.
Did they get cut or ground or anything before you used them?
I just got them slightly shaved, and I didn't even take off like 30%. I just took off enough so they wouldn't chunk up on me on the asphalt. You know what I'm saying? I had Rob Hurley do them.
Okay.
The tires ran great. Everything ran great. I had a lot of fun up there with that car.
So if the factory stocks ever go back to DOT tires, everybody's going to be getting Cooper Cobras now?
I was going to go with the Kumos, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But since I've been running the Cooper Cobras on dirt, I said, you know what, I'm going to try them on asphalt, and they worked fine, Okay. They were very comparable.
Did you use a durometer on it? Or?
Yeah. Another part of my master plan was, because they were brand new DOT tires, you have to break them in. So I'm like, I'll run all these races on Saturday, and my tires will be good for Sunday. And they were. I tell you, every time I raced, the car got better and better because the tires were getting better and better,
I miss those tires.
Yeah, they lasted forever, and they're still in the car, and they're like brand new. Another reason, Mike, one of the options was we could run a racing tire in that Enduro, and my friend Jason with the 77, he did use a set of my old racing tires from Wall Stadium. But another reason I went with the DOT tires is they're durable. They can take a hit, and they can run over a bumper on the track and not get flat, where a racing tire is a little bit thinner and not as durable. It can get punctured easy. I thought it was pretty cool being out there with different cars with different tires and everything like that. And I was very surprised Jason ran that whole race and never got a flat either, because there was a lot of debris on the track, and I thought for sure those Hoosiers would get cut. Mike, you've been to a lot of racetracks. You're like me and Josh, been involved in racing all your life. One of the crazy questions we like to ask all our guests, and we're going to let you go here in a couple of minutes, so I want to ask you this question before you got off the air. We always like, when we go to tracks, we like trying different track food. All the racetracks you've been to your whole life, what's been your favorite track food, and what track was it at?
Oh, wow. I got to think a second on that one.
Well, go ahead and think about that. While you're thinking about that, I just want to talk about the food at Bethel Speedway. It was good. You guys had great pizza there. The pizza was really good there. The girl was making it old-fashioned way, just like you would at a pizzeria. It's not like a frozen dough or nothing like that. She was making pizza pies back there. Had the Baker's Pride pizza oven. They had a regular cheese slices of pizza or pepperoni pizza, Josh, and it was very good. The pizza was very good there.
Was it a thin crust or was it a deep dish?
No, it was regular. She made a thin crust, and I was kind of making fun of her because I worked as a pizza maker from the age of 15 to about age of 30. So I made pizza for almost 20 years, and she was using a rolling pin to knead it out. I said, "What are you using a rolling pin for?" I said, "She's like, why? How'd you do it? You know how to make pizza?" I said, "I made pizza for 20 years, and I never used a rolling pin." And she said that it had a lot of air bubbles in it, so she was trying to get it out. And I'm like, "Here, let me make that pizza," But she was doing a great job. But I understand, because when you do make homemade dough, sometimes it doesn't come out as good as some other times, And she was just trying to get the air bubbles out with the rolling pin, which I thought was a pretty neat trick. But the pizza was very good. Mike, we always heard you guys had homemade soup. I didn't see homemade soup. I didn't really look for it, but one of the rumors was that you have really good homemade soup. Do you guys have a homemade soup up there?
I do know that on a lot of the colder race type days, we try and do like a soup or a chili. So generally it's like a special. I was so busy all weekend long, I really didn't check to see what our special was in the food stand. But yeah, I do know that we did chicken noodle soup a few times, along with a couple other ones. Thinking back, as far as track food goes and things of that nature, I would say what I remember most, as far as the food goes, is I remember the fried dough from Bob Maxwell at Orange County Fair Speedway as a kid. That was something that I would always eat and get, and it was excellent. And then I remember being at Wall Stadium one day. It was for an ROC modified race, and I want to say it was like around, I don't know, probably around 2000. And the fried Oreos, I had never seen that concept before, and I had gotten them, and I loved them. And then as far as overall track food, I'm more of a guy that goes to the diner afterwards to discuss that stuff. And usually when I'm eating track food at the track, it's usually in a rush, and I'm just filling my belly to keep going. But I do remember up in Dundee, New York, there's a dirt track called Outlaw Speedway.
Yes.
And I remember having some really delicious food at affordable prices. And I remember that being good. And as far as the best quality of the food was there. And then the best bargain, Lebanon Valley Speedway, $1 for everything. That was always great. It's amazing.
Is that something they did at the end of the night when they didn't just want to sell the food out? They just go $1 everything on the menu?
No, you used to go up there and almost everything was $1.
Really?
You'd have to trade your $10 bill or $5 bill and just only get ones. And then I remember everything was basically $1.
Oh, wow.
And so then the next thing you know, you're eating like 8 hot dogs and 3 donuts and.
Oh, let's be fair. What year was this?
Oh, well, it was in recent years because I don't get up there too often because I'm at Bethel on Saturday.
It might be $2 an item now with inflation, right, Josh?
Probably $2 a night now. But I want to say the last time I was up there as a spectator on a Saturday night when they had that system going was probably I don't know, in the mid '90s somewhere.
Okay, all right. I'll buy it.
I have a feeling that system isn't in place anymore, but yeah.
But I remember it, that's for sure.
And one thing I noticed on the sign, I didn't get it because I don't drink soda anymore, but I noticed you guys had Mr. Pibb soda. And when I was a kid, me and my brother, whenever we could find Pibb soda, we would drink it because back in the day, Joey Chitwood used to bring a thrill show to Wall Stadium, and the car jumped through a Pibb soda can, a big Pibb soda can. So I seen Pibb soda on your sign there, but unfortunately, I don't drink soda anymore, so I didn't order it.
I thought Scott was more of a Tab guy. I don't know.
I remember Tab. Remember that stuff? But right next to your main concession stand was also like a little food tent. Very nice people were working in there, and I was taking pictures of their stand. I was taking pictures of their menu, and they said, "Why are you taking our picture?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a host of an RPM podcast of the RPM podcast, and we like talking about track food." So I got talking with them, and we got talking about different tracks and different track foods and stuff like that. And one thing that caught me on their menu, it was fried peanuts, Josh, where we always make fun of down south how they have the boiled peanuts. So I was talking to the people that ran that food stand, and I said, "Listen, I go to New Smyrna every year." They're like, "Oh yeah, we go to Florida too for the races." I said, "They got boiled peanuts." I didn't even get the word boiled peanuts out of my mouth, and the guy was like, "They're disgusting. They're nasty. They're blah, blah." I said, "So now I got to try your fried peanuts." And so she gave me some free samples of their fried peanuts, and they were very good. And they had different flavors too, Josh. They had like a salted fried peanut. They had like a garlic fried peanut. And then they had like a Cajun spice fried peanut, and they're much better than boiled peanuts. They were also selling kettle corn. You can go buy a small bag or a jumbo size bag. They're selling caramel corn, same thing, a small bag or a jumbo bag. Really nice people to talk racing with in concessions. Your food was great up there, really, really reasonably priced and everything like that. And the girls that worked in the concession stands were very pleasant. I did have to ask, pulling into the track, I'm telling you what, it did have a little bit of like when me and my brother used to go to the Race of Champions when we were a kid. It did have a little bit of a Race of Champions feel. It was cold out. Every hotel you drove by, there was like race cars in the parking lots and stuff like that. So you can definitely tell you're in a town that the race was in. And I did notice a few Bethel Motor Speedway bumper stickers on cars in town when I was pulling into the racetrack. So I wanted a Bethel bumper sticker when I was there. I didn't see any out for sale, but I did ask the girls in the concession stand, and they did find some for me. They did open up a little booth and said, "Yeah, we still have some left." And so we were able to buy hats, Bethel Motor Speedway hats and bumper stickers. Unfortunately, they had shirts left. Josh, I was going to buy you a shirt, but they only had small and medium left. So I didn't think
I'm
that
a little
would
bigger than that.
Your small, medium days are over, so maybe next year I'll get you a T-shirt.
I appreciate it.
All right, Mike, we're going to let you get going, but we really appreciate you calling in. I just want to say that you guys did a great job. I mean, you guys really got the shows moving fast. The only race that really ran long was the Legend Car race, and I did hear on the receiver when I was there, they did make those guys go single file there towards the end, and they were still wrecking. And then they finally did say, "Listen, the next flag ends this race. If the yellow comes out, the race is over." But I do think they made it to the checkered flag. Other than that, every race went really smooth and went pretty quick. You guys run a great show up there, and I really liked racing there. I do have one little complaint. I mean, I'm not a racer if I don't complain about something. I just wish you guys the transponder system was working and you guys could get the races on Race Monitor. That's a big help for the racers now because we can see our lap times and stuff like that. Is there any reason why that wasn't working this weekend?
I do know that sometimes we have issues with our Wi-Fi signal, and a lot of it
So do we. We know the feeling, right, Josh?
Yeah. For some, I run into the same problem at Accord Speedway too, where when you have a weak Wi-Fi signal, you can't get the race monitor to work.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing is, we did open up the rules, so we weren't really forcing the transponders on the cars, and then some of those classes that were in the spotlight for the weekend, like the Enduro, for example, we generally don't go through the whole hassle of either forcing guys to buy the transponder or rent it.
Right.
So some classes weren't even on a transponder at all. Getting back to you on the kettle corn, the couple there from Binghamton, New York, they're a great couple, and they really love the racing there. And to be honest with you, it is probably the best kettle corn that I've ever had in my lifetime. And I definitely have had quite a few different types at various county fairs over the years, and it's really good there. So if you come up there, definitely go see them. They got some delicious food as well. And then as far as the Legends race goes, there's always those races that nothing seems to go right, and then after the attrition plays out, then it's good. It just so happened at the Legend race, we had a lot of teams in there from different tracks, and I could see that it was going to be an issue because even in the heat races, guys were spinning out. So then we started to allow them to kind of scuff their tires in before we would even start to get some heat in them. But it just didn't work out too well in the first few laps there in the Legend race, and we had a couple wrecks. But for the most part, once we went single file, it sorted out the problem, and then the race did hit its 40 lap distance. But that was the toughest one to do all weekend. And then overall, though, we were very satisfied with the show. The game plan is to try and get the secret of Bethel Motor Speedway out there to racers to come for the first time and experience it, for fans to come for the first time and experience it. I know that you had been there, Scott, a while ago with a truck.
I raced there with the Arch Truck Series, man. That was probably 98 or 99, and that's how long ago that was.
That's back when they had the dollar menu at the other time.
Yes.
Believe it or not, the track wasn't that smooth when I raced it. I remember going on the front straightaway, and there was a bump by the flag stand. It felt like you were going over a tabletop on a BMX course.
Yes, I remember that bump. Yes, you're right. But yeah, that was probably 20 years since you were there. And then one of the guys you were pitted with, Jason Duval, I remembered him, and it was the same Jason Duval, and it had been 20 years since he had been back.
I actually towed him up there that day. That was for the Sullivan 100 street stock race you guys had at the end of the year, and we towed his Wall Stadium street stock up there on a whim, and he ended up finishing third that day. And I think Ricky Giannino won that race that week. He was a Riverhead guy that raced at Flemington Speedway. He used to have those beautiful older Chevelle cars, the black number 44s. I think he won that day. And I remember we got yelled at that day at the racetrack because just like on Saturday, you guys had that 50-lap break, in the middle of the race where you could fuel the cars up. And I remember we were on the track fueling Jason's car up, and Jason gets out of his race car and starts smoking a cigarette on the front straightaway as we fill the car up with fuel. And everybody in the grandstand starts yelling at him because we're fueling the car up, and he's holding the funnel smoking a cigarette at the same time. That was just a memory we had of that track. Yeah, we did take Jason up there a long time ago, and he loved it,
So it's good to see some old faces come back after a while. Hopefully it's not that long the next time it happens. And I got a question for you, or actually two questions.
Sure.
So you were our Iron Man. So which race did you like the best? And the second question is, out of everything about Bethel Speedway, what is your overall favorite thing?
It's hard to choose the race I like the best because I had fun in all 3 or 4 features I was involved in. But of course, the Enduro was the most fun. I was telling Josh, I was laughing the whole race. I mean, there was cars out there leaking antifreeze. There was cars leaking oil. There was cars dragging their bumpers. There was debris all over the racetrack. There was cars all over. I was literally laughing the whole race, having such a fun. The one thing I did learn, one mistake I did make, I didn't put enough gear in my race car. I was only turning about 5,000 RPMs. I went there with like a 600 final. I think next time I already got to figure it out where I can put 456s in the rears and get up around 690. So that'll what I'll probably do next time when I come up there. And the best thing I liked about the race is, number one, how fast you guys ran the show. I know John Condit was there. We're friends with John Condit. He lives down here by us now. He was running around really making sure everything was going smooth. And like I told you earlier, I loved how smooth the racing surface was at that racetrack. It was really a smooth racetrack. And I can't wait to go back next year. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on your schedule and see where my car fits in and when I can make it up there and run some races. It'd be tough for me to go up there, all the way up there and run like a 25-lap race on such a small track. You know what I'm saying? It'd be a long ride up there. But if you have like 50 lappers or 100 lappers, then it's worth me making the trip up there. One crazy question I wanted to ask you, is there any chance you guys may be doing a winter enduro, like in January or February, like a frostbite type enduro?
Please.
Josh's Josh's best finish is what, a third or a fourth at a winter enduro? A third. He got a third. That's his best career finish, along with a Consi win at Turkey Derby. That's his claim to fame as a driver. Third place finish at Evergreen in the frostbite race they had there in the snow. Any chance you guys might think about doing something like that?
Well, a January frostbite race, you know that's higher elevation up there in the Catskill Mountains. So January is cold up there. And I don't even know if our system would function as far as, like the septic and the plumbing and the heating and the kitchen and stuff like that. It'd be tough to get fans to go there. I'm not going to say it would never happen. I know it's not going to happen this year, but one thing that might happen is maybe kind of a spring thaw race instead of a frostbite race.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And maybe that's something that we can get on the schedule and try and get some support of an early season enduro, maybe street stocks, 4-cylinder, something like that. I remember going to one of those one year at Albany, Saratoga. It was a New Year's Day race. And
Like a hangover race or something they would call it, right?
It was an enduro.
Yeah.
And it was freezing cold. It was like 12 degrees up there. And I think our truck broke down going up to the track. And whenever we couldn't get the car started for the enduro, and then we ran to an auto part store, bought a battery, changed the battery, and we just got it out there just in time as they were going green. There was like 100 cars there.
Oh, wow.
And I remember going out, and there was about an inch of some type of snow ice on the track. And then I think one corner had gotten the sun, and that was dirt. And we ran the race. We drew a good spot, and we couldn't even use it because the battery was dead. So we were busy changing the battery. So we didn't get the good spot that we drew. We started dead last, and I think we got up, I want to say somewhere in the top 10. And then I remember like a Lincoln Mark IV 6-cylinder took us out, got us into the left rear wheel and spun us into the berm. And I don't know, we almost ended up hitting the light pole there. But by the time we got out of there, we had lost probably like 2 or 3 laps, and that was our day. But it's cold, and I can see why some guys are into that stuff. It was interesting for sure, but I don't see that happening this year at Bethel, but who knows?
I will say that the one that I finished third in, I think it was 0 degrees when I left the farm. It was 8 degrees when we got to the track. It was a sheet of ice with like six inches of snow on top.
Yeah, because that track's in the Pocono Mountains, so it's just as high up there and just as cold,
And after the race, I was like in my truck, basically screaming because I couldn't feel my fingers. It was just I started that race as actually like a lap down because coming to the green, I got into a snowbank and I was busy forward, reverse, trying to get out of that. And the leader had actually passed me and gone across the line to complete the first lap before I even took the flag. And hey, to still finish third. I mean, I had so much fun that race. It was awesome. I just would probably bring some hand warmers inside the car with me next time.
And Mike, you did say, part of the reason you wouldn't want to do a winter race at Bethel is because, like, your plumbing's already winterized, everything's winterized, the kitchen's shut down, all that stuff. Wall Stadium did it one year, and what they did, instead of opening the bathrooms up and the concession stands up, they just hired a couple food trucks to come in, and like coffee trucks
and some porta potties.
like that. And they set up porta potties. They didn't even, everything was winterized. They left everything winterized. There was spectators there, don't get me wrong, but it was more of a competitor-driven day, where they made the money off the back gate. They didn't really worry about the grandstands too much, And we did have good turnouts doing it. It was a lot of fun. But they actually had problems with the town because Wall Stadium's got a weird thing. They can only be open from like April to November too, and then after November, they can't race from like December to April again. You know what I'm saying? So they did one. I remember when they did it. They advertised it as a January race, and we were all getting the cars ready. And like the week of, they didn't know if they were going to be able to do it because the town's like, you're not permitted to operate in the winter months, and they had to get a special event permit to have that race. And they did get it done in time when we did race, and it was a good time. But it's just something to think about. Not a rumor, but my dad passed away a couple years ago, and he was friends with Joe Scarborough, and he knew a little bit about Sullivan County, and he would go up there and watch the races every once in a while. He also did some towing on the side. He was a auto parts manager for a bus company. That's what he did for a living. And they also worked on some cars. They worked on a lady's car, and it broke down. in the wintertime
Okay.
in Sullivan County, and he had to go up there with his race car Ram truck, the Ram truck he used to haul his race car with to pick this customer up. And he said when he was in the town there, he said they were racing on a lake up there. Do you know anything about ice racing up there in your area where the cars race on lakes?
Well, the track is not far from what they call Kenneunga Lake and White Lake.
Yeah.
And there's actually two lakes that are connected. There's like a small creek that connects the two. They're both very deep lakes. One of the deepest in New York State. I do know that they do a big ice fishing contest. But I'd have to check with the Old Town locals to see if they ever did ice racing on it. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
And it could have been something. It would be interesting to see an ice race there. So who knows? I do think that in our code, we have the same thing that Wall has. It does say that you're not allowed to compete after a certain time in December. I think December 1st till like April 1st, we're not allowed to race.
Right.
But I'd have to double check that. But the town has been pretty good with us. They a lot of times they go above and beyond the actual code and grant us stuff that we can do there. And going back to about your father, I had seen you had done a retro paint scheme on him, and it was a white car with a blue 7X. And when I see that number, it reminds me of one of Bethel's most successful racing teams came from what they call 7X Motors, which you actually drive by on the way to the track.
Yeah, I did see that. Yep.
Yes, and I wonder.
I also seen a topless bar too. You ever been in there?
Yeah. You know who you ask on that one is John Condit.
John Condit, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually see two topless bars. One was closed and one was open. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't promote that one, but the 7X Motors. I wonder when I seen when you did the throwback for your father there. I wonder if there is some type of connection that maybe someone had bought someone's car off of someone and just kept the number, you know?
Now that number's been in my family for many, many years. It actually started out back in the day. The full number was 177X, where I don't know where that number came from, but it got shortened up when they went to electronic scoreboards. And my dad always said he made a mistake. He should have been 17 or 77 or just 7, but he always liked the X. So he went with the 7X, and then he realized when he got to the tracks that had the electronic scoreboards, they only had the 2 digits, so you couldn't use 3-digit or 4-digit numbers anymore. So they told everybody that winter, we're going to electronic scoreboards. You can only have 2-digit numbers. So my dad went with the 7X, but the X doesn't. You can't even put the X on the digital. So then when he got there, they're like, no, 2 digits. It's got to be numbers. It's got to be. You can't be letters. It's got to be numbers. But he still ran the 7X, and they just scored him as the 7. But yeah, that 7X has been in our family for a very long time. I was going to run the 7X when I first started racing. I started racing at Flemington Speedway when they first paved it in '91, and there was already a 7 there. And I couldn't do the 7X thing. And then I got the 09 pretty much by accident. We wanted to have a double-digit number. My brother was a huge Jamie Tomano fan, and he told me, he's like, Scott, if you make the car 99, I'll pay to get it lettered. So we tried to get a 99, and it was taken. And then Jamie was also famous for running the 09. So Tim was like, well, let's get the 09. And I'll pay to get your car letter. And that's how I've been the 09 forever. I was also the number 71 for a while because that was kind of one of my dad's old numbers too back in the day when he ran a foreign compact division. We always talk about that on the show, about how people got their numbers, you know, but yeah, 7X was a family number and it didn't really have a connection up there in any way though.
I'll tell you a quick funny story about a number up at Bethel that used to drive the announcers crazy. And I got to make sure I word it right here on this podcast. So the announcer used to call it, all right, it was the Klein Racing family, and they always had a bunch of brothers and whatever. They were big Mopar guys, and they had fast cars, but they were like a like a logging family up there into forestry and stuff like that. So they're usually a big lumberjack looking guys and guys you wouldn't want to mess with. So anyway, they created this number. I don't know why, but they created this number that would drive the announcer nuts. And he had to call it when the car would come out. He would have to call it the 4-lettered Q. So instead, because if you said it the other way, when you would say it, it would sound like something else that you were saying to the fans. So he figured out you had to say 4 and then put in the word lettered Q. Because if you said the other thing too fast, it became
we had a guy down here. His number was the 4QU2. So it was like FU2, you know, when you said it really quick too. Another funny number I saw when I used to do demolitions out in Pennsylvania, people used to be like, used to have the number RU18.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always thought that was a funny number. See, Josh, I mentioned a topless bar up in Bethel, and now we go in a whole different direction with numbers now.
Is this a side podcast that we're starting now?
But yeah, getting back to John Conda, he was a long-time racer there. He had left wall to go up there. He was one of the first guys to do it.
Yeah,
and,
he had that white and turquoise color number 7 up there, right?
Yes, and he was a good driver, and we always got along good racing with him because you know, we were kind of new there racing as well because we had raced at Orange County for the Speedway all them years and were never regular there. So right around the same time we were becoming regular as he was, but both our team and his team were not well liked among the locals. So it took a while to get accepted there, and then John, he was successful there, but was short-lived, and then I think he ended up back at Wall Stadium. And then
he also had one of those Arch trucks for a little while too. He raced the Arch Truck Series with me for a little while too.
Yes, he did. And then somewhere along the lines, he crossed the dark side like I did, and both became officials. And we worked good together. And one of the things that's great about Bethel is right now the team of officials there, we're pretty much firing on all 8 cylinders every night. We get along good. We know the strategy of what we got to do and what kind of show we got to put on, and what to expect out of the racers and to keep the fans happy. And it goes along pretty smooth, and then that allows us to run a fast-paced show and get some type of respect out of the racers while doing it. Is it perfect? No, it's never going to be perfect. Are the racers perfect? No, the racers are never going to be perfect. But we're pretty close. We're getting closer and closer, and we're getting closer to the goals that we want to do. And John, he isn't able to come up there as much as he'd like because he's busy doing his other businesses and stuff like that. But when he can come, he's a great asset. And one of his best tools is he's able to relate to the common racer, and he's a good communicator, and he keeps his cool. So
yeah, smart guy.
Yes, he is, and so that's one of the good things that goes on behind the scenes at Bethel is we're clicking as a team, and then what that results is it comes across good to a racer or fan racing there, you know, or watching the races there.
And another thing I noticed what you do too to speed the show along is you line the cars up in the pits, and when you pull out on that racetrack, Josh, you better be ready to go racing because you know how well they line us up in the pits too at Wall, but then they do pull us down onto the front straightaway and stop us on the front straightaway, and then they do one lap single file to make sure the transponders are working, and then they double file and go green. At Bethel, they pulled out on the track, Josh, and they were hauling butt, man. I had to catch up. I'm like, we're going green right away, man. They just you're lined up, you pull out on the track as fast as you can, you get lined up. One to go, next green, next time by. Next thing you know, you're green. And another thing they do too is they don't do victory lane down on the racetrack. They actually pull you into a victory lane section, kind of where the pits meet the grandstands. So they do victory lane in there so they can get the next race out on the racetrack really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, we generally when it's cold, that's when we try and push our show the fastest, and also when there's rain coming in on our radar. We really go into hyper mode to get as many races in as possible. We don't want to disappoint nobody. Sometimes we make exception to the victory lane rule if it's a real dramatic win, or if it's a guy that's winning there for the first ever time. Sometimes we go down, we'll do an on-track interview right then and there to catch the emotion and everything like that. But, sometimes it's guys that have won there for the 45th time, or it's their 7th win of the season. And, there's just no need to slow down the show that much to do that. We can do that in our victory lane. And we really save the good stuff for the on-track interviews and just catch that emotion right there.
I like that idea. I think that's a really smart idea or way to do things.
All right, one last question before we let you go, Mike. You guys are NASCAR sanctioned. Was this the first year you guys were NASCAR sanctioned?
Yes, it was the first year that we were ever NASCAR sanctioned. Generally, our track would never qualify to be a NASCAR sanctioned track, but it seems like that they've lessened their criteria in recent years. And the ownership was really interested in trying to NASCAR out and see if that was beneficial to the track. So we tried it, and we were NASCAR sanctioned this year, and we're more than likely you're going to be NASCAR sanctioned next year. I would say high probability.
Okay, cool. Definitely keep us posted over the winter. You're more than welcome to come back on the show and promote anything you got going on at Bethel. Maybe in the spring when your schedule comes out, if you want to come and talk about the schedule, we would love to hear it. I'm sure you guys are working on having some big races up there next year, and we definitely would like to hear about it. And when I was there, I was kind of daydreaming a little bit. If I was a race promoter, I was kind of trying in my mind to figure out if that track could handle a race such as like an ROC modified race. Do you think you could have an ROC modified race there?
As far as the track and the configuration, you could do the race, but you'd have to fix the walls better.
Right.
The walls would need to be better. We would have issues with getting all them stacker haulers into the pit area. Ideally, in my pipe dream, I'd like to eventually swap where the spectator area is with the pits, and generally make that flat, larger area for the spectator lot into a pit area, and then have the pits more in the hilly terrain. So I would see issues with trying to get those big haulers in there and fit them. The ROC is not as bad as, say, a NASCAR whaling race.
Yeah, I know the cost. The cost is a lot more to have a NASCAR modified tour race there than an ROCs. And I was just thinking maybe if the ROC race and they bought 20 cars, you could fit them in the pits. And I was even like daydreaming a little bit how you guys open the gates at noon. You could maybe open the gates at like 11 and let the ROC guys pit first, get them all set up, and then you could fill in the pits with your local divisions after the ROC guys are in there, so they have room to move those haulers around.
And that's not a bad idea. And so I think that the biggest problem that would be to host an ROC race would be is to handle the type of purse that they
Exactly.
Need. That's where we hit a stumbling block, and
you would need a race sponsor for something like that to help you pay the purse,
Yeah, because it's getting to the point in this day and age that the race fan themselves is becoming it's almost kind of like a dinosaur. It's getting harder and harder to attract the younger generation to do that type of watching the races for that time period, and being really into it to want to pay, over $30 for a ticket to support a race like that. And so you really do need a big sponsor to step forward to help handle the purse, or the opposite needs to happen amongst the racers, where they need to cut back their costs to make their cars have less expense. So that way, when they race for less money, it still equals out,
Right. Well, we can all dream. Maybe someday we'll have the ROC modified race at Bethel Motor Speedway presented by the RPM podcast.
Exactly. I see something like that, because I think that it would be an awesome race to watch, and it's a different type of driving style there. and you really got to be good to win there. So
and it would be good for the ROC themselves too, because they are primarily a New York state series, and that's a part of the state they don't reach. So if they came over to that corner of the state, it'd be perfect. It would be perfect, because then they would be racing all the way from Lancaster all the way over to Bethel. You know, they would be covering the whole state. You know.
Yeah, and in fact, I've reached out to a lot of these racers that run these modifieds, and none of them really put their nose up to Bethel until you start telling them about purse money.
Right.
And then that's when you hit the wall.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing that we got to get past is how to host a race like that, because I think it would be a phenomenal show there.
I tell you what, Mike, on a personal note, you're one of the hardest working guys I ever dealt with in racing, because Josh, he's been after me for about 3 years to come up there and race. He always sends me private messages saying, hey, man, we got this race coming up. Hey, man, we'd love to see you come up here. I'm like, I'm trying. And he's been on me for 3 years. It finally paid off where I came up there, and I did bring my friend Jason, so we did bring 2 cars up there. Mike, keep up the great work. Another thing, this is the third last thing I want to mention, but well, one of the things you guys promote there is that you're the home of like the $6 general admission ticket into the grandstands. That's awesome. You know, me and Josh always talk about that, and we even notice it down here. If they have the $10 pack the track night at Wall Stadium, you get the people there. You know, you make it affordable to get in the grandstands, and the people show up. So I think it's great that you guys have a low cost general admission ticket for your grandstands.
One of the promotions we did this year. We did raise the general admission prices by a little bit. I believe it's $10 to get in, but for years we were $6 admission, but now it's $10. But one of the big things that we do is we make sure that the kids get in free. We give a very significant senior discount for anyone that's over 65. And one of the things that we don't really promote that well, but something that we want to do is we salute our veterans and current military. Whenever they come, they get in for free. So
oh, wow.
Any charge to go in for general admission and sit in the grandstands and watch the races. If you're any type of retired military veteran or active military.
That's awesome. I mean, down here we have military discounts, but you go the full distance and let them in for free. That's awesome.
So we're looking to maybe contact some more local VFW halls and stuff like that. But if you happen to know any veteran guys that are looking to go to some new racetracks, that's something that costs them nothing to get in, just the gas money to get there. That's it.
Yeah.
And Josh, you being part of the KISS Army doesn't count for you to get in free in the grandstands.
Fair enough. I was hoping.
All right, Michael, we kept you longer than we probably should have, but we really, really appreciate you calling in, man. You're a wealth of knowledge of racing in that area, and we really enjoyed talking to you. You're very much like us. You live and breathe racing. You love track food. Didn't talk much about the topless bar, but maybe we can get into that next time. Why one's open, one's closed, that's the reason why I want to know. Did someone have better looking girls in the clubs than the other one, or why is one's open and one's not? But we really appreciate you calling in, Mike, and I can't stress enough that what a great time we had up there racing this weekend. You guys put on a great show, and we thank you for calling in.
Yeah, I want to give special thanks to some of these guys that coordinated this special double header race they did with the enduro racers from Long Island. They went out to Evergreen, they did an enduro there, and then they caravanned to Bethel the following day, and they put on a hell of a show for the fans that braved the cold. So I want to give a special thanks to the enduro racers that really stole the show for the weekend. It was phenomenal. And I'll be heading down. I'm planning to come down to the last 5/8 race at the Bridgeport Speedway. So I'll get my racing in there, I think, on Sunday. I'm going to try and get down there and see that for the final time.
What about Turkey Derby? Will you be down for Turkey Derby?
I'm not sure. I work at
you got Accord. Yeah, Accord. It's Accord, Josh, not Accord. We call it Accord. You guys call it Accord, right?
It's funny, right? You got it. You're local to the area and the Speedway. You call it Accord, all right? And then if you don't know about it, then you call it Accord, and then people know that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. So and I'm one of the guys that don't know what I was talking about, because I went to a race at Orange County I had a tow up that way. I had to go pick up a car that way, and they were racing at Orange County Speedway that night, and I'd never been there before. So I said, "This is perfect. I'm going to pick this car up, and then I'm going to go to the races." And I was there by myself, and I went. They have a bar right there behind the grandstands. I was hanging out in the bar. I said, "Oh, I seen a sign for another racetrack up in this area." I was talking to some people in there. I'm like, "A Cord." They're like, let me stop you right there. It's not called a Cord. I'm like, "Yeah, it is. It's ACCORD. It's a Cord." They're like, "No, it's Ackerd." I'm like, "Ackerd?" I'm like, "Okay, it's Ackerd." So they shut me up right quick when I called it.
So Ackord's planning to do their gobbler.
Yeah.
So that should be the same time. But Turkey Derby's a 3-day show. I do know that one of my partners up there at the Speedway there, Peter Crackers Reynolds, he's planning on being at the Turkey Derby to talk to guys and watch the race in there. Whether I get down there or not, I'm not 100% sure. But I plan to hit Bridgeport up this Sunday, I think, and see that last 5/8 race.
Yeah, you told a story a little earlier how when you guys went to that race and you broke down on the way. I have a similar story Saturday morning. I broke down on my way up to Bethel. You said my car was mechanically solid, all race long, but I spent all week working on my race car, not working on my tow vehicle. I actually had an alternator go bad on the way up there, and we changed it right in an advanced auto parking lot on the way up there. So
I remember one night we had one at Fonda Speedway, which is like 3 hours north of where we live. We won the race. So there's the three of us are in the cab of the truck, right? A single cab truck. And we're driving back down the thruway to where we live, right? We're happy that we're talking about everything. We were talking so much that we ran out of gas in the middle of the night. So that we had a little bit of race gas to pick up. And so then anyway, we didn't get back till daylight. That was a long day. But we won, so that's the main thing, and we had fun. But we were talking so much about it, we ran out of gas. So those things happen, that's why promoters and racetrack operators have to be so thankful for the racers that come out and support them, because there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes and a lot of sacrifices with family and job and stuff like that to make those shows. So I thank everybody that's able to do it and support these tracks. And it's important that you guys do it. And I would definitely try to always treat the racer well, because they made the effort to come.
All right, Mike, we really, really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you at Turkey Derby. If not, have a great winter and an off season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thanks for having me on the show, and best of luck with everything, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon.
All right, man. See you later, buddy.
Have a good one.
All right, good night.
Business owner? Looking for a great way to get your brand out to a dedicated market? Join the club. Email us at info@therpmpodcast.com for all sponsorship details.
All right, and we're back. Second half of the RPM podcast, episode 157. We want to thank Michael Hager for calling in. What a great interview, man. I know it went long. I know it was really long, but I've been wanting to talk to that guy for a long time. Bethel Motor Speedway has always been a cool track, and it's a cool area of the country and the state of New York that a lot of us don't get to go to. So I want to hear all his stories up in that area. That's why it ran so long. There's a few more questions I want to ask him, so we definitely have to have him back on over the winter. He was a wealth of knowledge for everything up there. I know he talked like he's been involved in racing all his life, and he has, and he's not that old of a guy. He's probably right around the same age as me and you, Josh, Okay. So it's not like we're talking to a 60-year-old guy or nothing like that. But he knows a lot. His family's been racing up there a lot. He was great to talk to. I can't wait to have him back on, and we'll definitely make him more available to us to talk racing. And he knows asphalt and dirt racing, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we're moving on to the NASCAR stuff. I didn't get to see anything of the NASCAR racing this weekend because I was at Bethel Speedway. I haven't even had a chance to check the highlights, to tell you the truth. All I know is Kevin Harvick won. I knew they were having trouble with the traction compound on the track.
It did not look too sticky. A lot of guys were sliding around.
And Josh, what did we learn at the beginning of the year? They said it needs heat to make it work. Remember?
Okay.
Were the temperatures cold down there in Texas this time of year?
It wasn't unbearably hot, but I mean, it's still Texas.
Because I could have swore the Xfinity race before it started, when they were showing the people, not the grandstand people, but the announcers sitting outside in the little thing, they were all in jackets and stuff.
Okay.
And hats.
I got
So
you.
I'm thinking they sprayed that track down and it was too cold for it to work.
Okay. Yeah, it might have been. I know it was clearly a lot darker. I mean, you had your low groove, which was nice and light, and the top of the track, it took rubber or something because it got really dark. But it wasn't. I mean, nobody was really using it. A couple of guys would go up there here and there. A couple of guys tried to make
no one goes up there. It's never going to heat up to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think, and a lot of times you'll see them slowly, a couple inches at a time, kind of move up there. But no, it was you were running one lane or the other. Occasionally, somebody might slide up there, but it looked slicker than it should have been. Before we forget, the Ferris wheel was there.
I saw that. I
All,
did see
always
that
important.
highlight.
That looked really cool at night for the.
So
for the Xfinity race.
Drew's theory, the place should have been packed because the Ferris wheel was there, and that's supposed to attract the fans, and the crowd was not good.
No. And now there was one thing, and Tony Stewart actually had talked about this. I meant to add in here.
Two things. You go ahead and say your one thing, and I know one other thing that you might not know.
Okay. Well, Formula One, which I know you're talking about different disciplines and style of racing and different fans, but both the Circuit of the Americas race in Texas and the Texas Motor Speedway race were on the same weekend and the same day.
Which is nuts. Crazy
Like,
nuts. Why
you're gonna
in
bring-
the world would they do that?
Like, if it's my only chance to see Formula One in America, I want to check it out, and that looks like a beautiful facility.
Right.
Or I can go to a NASCAR race.
Now, what do you think happened there? Because NASCAR's been there for a long time. They were there before Formula One. They've had this date for a while. You think that's just F1 saying, screw you, NASCAR, we'll do what we want?
No, I think it's honestly people being and I'm gonna use the word ignorant, but not in a hateful way. But it's like they got the blinders on. They're only looking at their thing. Like, they don't care what the basketball playoffs have to do with their.
They think they're the best show in town and they're going to win out. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe that, but also just, well, we have a big series to plan. This is where it's going to fall, and that's it. They don't look at other stuff in the area because well, Formula One, what else do they have to compete with normally? Like what, V8 supercars once in a while or something like that. Here you have, arguably the biggest racing series in America in the same state, a couple hours away or something?
Yeah. That's what they said. It was only 2 hours separation between the two tracks. So,
and
yeah,
Scott,
you're
that's
drawing
nothing
the same
for you.
It's nothing. It's nothing.
So
I don't even get out of the truck and pee in 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they're definitely they were definitely using the same fan base right there.
And within that, sometimes you're looking at staying at a hotel, let's say maybe an hour away from the track, depending on how full things get or for your price range. Well, if you're an hour away in the direction, you're also an hour away from the other track. So, I mean, you're going to be booking hotels.
You might have people staying in the same hotel in the middle, going to
different
their separate ways in the morning. One's going to Formula One, one's going to the NASCAR race. Yeah. It's nuts. They got to work that out because they're just hurting each other. It's crazy. It's totally stupid.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what the second excuse was why the place wasn't packed?
I don't know. Tell me it had to do with voters or Trump's wall or something. I don't know.
It was opening deer season in the state of Texas on
Sunday. You know what?
And they said that's a bigger holiday than Christmas.
They take no seriously.
Which I thought
know.
was kind of crazy because I know here in New Jersey you can't even hunt on Sundays, right? There's no hunting on Sundays.
I don't know that. I don't think that's the case. But I know that when they open a season for hunting, parents will take their kids out of school to go hunting.
Oh yeah, my dad said when he was a kid, he didn't go to school for a week. The whole deer season, he wouldn't even go to school. He would hunt every day. You know what I'm saying?
I believe
so.
it.
Yeah. I mean, we all know down in Texas, hunting's still big, and they said it was opening day of deer season, and they said it's bigger than Christmas down there. So that's something NASCAR's got to look at too. And NASCAR might as well just change their date, get away from deer season, get away from F1.
Yeah. Honestly, it's not a bad idea. Now, I think they had actually they had one of the Haas NASCAR cars go over to Circuit of the Americas and run a couple laps, just like IndyCar had a car at the Roval.
Right.
So they were trying to cross promote. That was the only thing that they remotely did to work together that I saw. Otherwise, yeah.
Tony Stewart said that's a perfect track for a road course for the Cup cars too. He said it was good, right?
Yeah. I think he was a fan of that. He just wasn't a fan of the scheduling.
Right.
I would love to see it happen there. Road courses are starting to come into favor, and you have a big, beautiful facility there. Why not use it? But yeah, I don't know. Just stupid. So stupid. It didn't need to happen like that. And everybody just, like you said, I think it's like they had blinders on and they just, didn't look at anything else that might be happening in the area at that time, and they just stepped on their own foot. So, yeah, anyway, moving on from that, looking forward to moving to the next round. Harvick gets a win. He moves on. Chase Elliott got into the wall early, really hurt his day. I think he was like lap 9 or lap 20 or something like that. He got up into the wall and really messed up the car. There's an early debris caution. One of the Texas Motor Speedway triangle signs that hang on the fence broke off and left debris around the track. So that was just it's like when the traffic lights fall off or something like that, which doesn't happen often. But there was a really weird incident with Keselowski and Stenhouse. And it looked like they both just got loose. Maybe they hit oil or something, because when you caught it late in the wreck, like when you're watching it live and they switched to that angle, it looked like Stenhouse just went right into the back of Keselowski. But Keselowski had actually gotten loose, got up into the wall, and Stenhouse had gotten loose behind him at a higher speed and got up into the wall, and it straightened out the car and put him right into the back of Keselowski, like dead square.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a really strange wreck. Jimmy Johnson led some laps, and
good for him.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy about it, and he's like, "Oh, it's good to see Jimmy leading again." Sure. It's like like we talked about. I mentioned to this guy, working towards next year.
Yeah, I tell you what, he's finishing this year up. He's been running better at the end of this year with this new crew chief. So I think next year looks good for Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah. The other thing is they were talking. This has been in the news, and this isn't the first time we've heard stuff like this, but it's been a while. Talking about people spinning on purpose. They're saying that Bubba Wallace might have spun on purpose to bring out a caution to help himself. Did you read anything on that?
Yeah, I did see a highlight on that, and I did hear on NASCAR radio, and NASCAR says they are going to start keeping an eye on it.
Okay.
It was a judgment call, and they weren't prepared to make that judgment call, but they said they are going to address it at the drivers' meeting next week, and they're going to encourage these drivers not to do it. Because I guess it happened at Martinsville too. I think Clinton Boyer did it at Martinsville as well. So it's starting to be a little bit of a trend, and NASCAR says they are going to look into it and warn the drivers not to do it.
Well, wasn't Clint Boyer one of the original ones that did it a couple years ago with Waltrip and
got
all
in trouble.
that?
That's how they lost all that sponsorship and stuff. Remember?
Yeah, that whole itchy arm thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I get why people do it. It's the same reason people, if they spin out in a modified, they park it on the track even though the car is fine, just to draw a caution. And it annoys the hell out of me as a fan. But I don't know. It's just, you're in the big leagues now. Get over it. And if it's team orders, that's the thing. They were saying that Bubba did it on for himself. He wasn't doing it to help a teammate or something like that. But I mean, you're intentionally affecting the outcome of a race by doing something other than trying to pass someone. I don't know. So we'll see how they police it. The Xfinity race I didn't get to watch as much of, but honestly, it looked cool under the lights. I'll say that much. Scott, you got to see some of that, you said?
Yeah, I did. We got back to the hotel around 7:30 from Bethel, and I took a shower, ordered some food, and I did watch the first half of the Xfinity race, and then I fell asleep. Not because the race sucked or anything. I was exhausted from being at the racetrack all day.
No, I believe it. overall, it looked like it was a pretty decent race. We'll do the top 10 for those in a minute, but I want to bring up a local tie-in to NASCAR with Danny Bone going to, I believe, was it Phoenix?
Yeah, he's going to Phoenix, the race in Arizona, and then after that he's also going to Miami Homestead. So
Right.
he's finishing the year up, and he's going with he does have another sponsor on that truck. It is sponsored, and we did notice today on Facebook that a local sponsor, Woody's and Tom's Tavern, the bars in Farmingdale, are sponsoring them also. They're on the back deck lid, so that's pretty cool.
That's great to get that, a local business to step up to that degree to help out a local or formerly local guy. And I mean, hopefully we'll get a shot of it on TV, but hopefully not, because of a wreck or anything. But that was really cool. So real quick, we're going to do the top 10 for the Xfinity series. Or I'll do the top 5 because it doesn't want to load. So Christopher Bell gets the win. Ross Chastain, Cindric, Jones, and Nemechek are your top 5. And there we go. Now I can get the top 10. Okay. Allgaier, Burton, Cole Custer, the other Burton, Jeb Burton, and Ryan Sieg are your top 10. For the Cup Series, Kevin Harvick getting the win, followed by Eric Almirola, Daniel Suarez, who we haven't seen up there in quite a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he comes in third.
So the Stewart Haas cars must have been fast down in Texas.
Then Joey Logano. Then Alex Bowman, Martin Truex Jr., who started farther back. He ended up in 6th. Let's see, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, and Eric Jones round out the top 10. So it was a good weekend, I think, for them. I did want to bring up, I'm not going to go into the Formula One stuff, really. I wanted to, but we had the show's running long. So 2 things we're going to talk about real quick with IndyCar. There was an article I saw that they want to have a driverless Indy Lights race in 2021. Which, I mean,
isn't that called an RC race?
Yeah. Well, I think you're looking at RoboCar or Robo Race, except it's not Robo Race. It's somebody's trying to compete with Robo Race. I don't know what's going on here.
You know what? We can laugh about it all you want, and we can say it's not going to work. But then again, I tuned into TV the other day, and there was like drone racing going on. They were like racing through a building and stuff like that, and people were watching it. So who knows? It might work. I can't really. It's not my cup of tea, but who knows? It might work.
My kid likes watching videos of other people playing video games. So
I tell you what, one time I walked into Thomas's room, he was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm watching someone play a video game. I'm like, you're what? I'm like, you're not playing. No, I'm watching this guy play. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. But the big news for IndyCar is Roger Penske bought IndyCar and Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I tell you what, this was the best kept secret ever because I never even heard a peep or I never even had a clue that this was happening.
Yeah,
I follow racing pretty close, not so much IndyCar racing, but usually something like this in NASCAR
something this big.
Yeah, this big. It's like you woke up one morning, boom, it was there. It was almost like it was fake. I'm like, no way, And then,
I had to triple check the source to make sure it wasn't.
Yeah, and then I kept seeing it coming out in more and more sources started coming out with it. I'm like, oh, maybe this is true. I mean, I think it's going to be great for the sport. I think Roger Penske's a perfect guy. He has the money. He has the influence. He knows racing. He's a true racer at heart that has money in his own separate businesses. The only downfall, and I even mentioned it to you earlier, Josh, is his age. I mean, I wish he would have did it 10 years ago. He's 83 years old.
Now, I am a little concerned with conflict of interest, his teams, but I mean, it's kind of, I mean, what? They're going to get more track testing time? I mean, he's just spent a ton of money to possibly save.
Josh, I said the same thing too. How can you own like 4 teams and own the series? And then I heard people like Michael Andretti, Chip Ganassi, they're all for it. It doesn't bother them one bit that Roger owns the series now. They're all for it. They say he's going to make it better. And if they don't care, then I don't care. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones that should care, not me,
Right. So, I mean, I don't think he's going to do anything that obviously bends rules to his favor. I mean, he might do some
things.
things.
It's IndyCar racing, they're one of the fastest cars on the planet. So what rules are you really going to bend? They already let you do anything you want. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I don't. The whole thing is going to be interesting. We'll see where it goes. We're going to see where he takes it, and I hope it does well. And Scott, you had said before, can't make it any worse.
No, but then again, IndyCar's been on the climb. Now, do you think he bought the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar series came with it? Or do you think he bought the IndyCar series and the racetrack came with it?
That's a fun thought.
Where do you think the value is in that sale? I think it's the racetrack.
Unfortunately, because you could dissolve the whole series and change it to something else. Just like they absorbed CART.
I almost wonder if he wanted to buy the series and then they're like, well, you can buy the track too, or if you want to buy the racetrack and they're like, well, why don't you just buy the whole series while you're at it?
Yeah. Honestly, I could see either direction working, unfortunately. I can't comment because I don't know. It could really go.
You know what? Now that I think about it, he probably bought the series and the track came with it because Roger Penske owned racetracks and he sold them all. So, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
He probably wanted the series and he's like, well, I'll take over the track too, because he owned Michigan and all that stuff. And I don't think he owns any of that stuff anymore.
Well, now they can put the sticky stuff on the track, and
because he owned that. He owned Nazareth too. He owned Nazareth in Michigan and California, right? He's the one that opened the California track too. Oh, you can always tell a Penske track because the grandstands were red and yellow.
Okay, I didn't know that, but I'm starting to see it. Well, I think that he should put the sticky stuff down and make a second groove at Indy. That's my thought.
He might, and he's going to be good for the sport. He's going to be good for the sport.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, he's
like I said, I'm sure he has a great team in place and a bunch of people helping him. He surrounds himself with good people. The only downfall in this sale is he's 83 years old. I wish he would have did it at 63 or 73 or whatever. But this might have been a lifelong dream of his, and it's coming through for him.
And he may do a better job setting it up for the future.
And he has run series before. He was the head guy at IROC, and he ran that IROC series for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. And you know what, though? I bet you Pocono comes back on. He's a Pennsylvania guy.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Bring it back to Pocono. And
yeah, he was all for IndyCars being at Pocono. His business started in Reading, Pennsylvania. The IndyCars used to be in Reading, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Reading's only right down the street from Pocono. So I'm pretty sure that we'll see Pocono back on the schedule. But maybe on the road course.
Who was it that brought the IndyCars to Wall for that shakedown?
It was Penske.
Maybe.
Because he lived or lives in Middletown, right in Middletown, New Jersey. That's why the IROC cars were in Tinton Falls.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have to see where it goes. I'm interested, to say the least. We'll see what happens with schedules. And speaking of schedules, we're going to get into the local stuff. The modified tour schedule has been released.
And it looks pretty good. It looks real good. And the one thing I skimmed down to real quick to make sure Wall Stadium was on it, and they are July 11th, 2020. So that means one thing: Wall Stadium is going to be open next year.
Wow, and it was May this year, so they're moving it all the way to July. Okay,
which is hot.
It'll be a hot race, that's for sure. I hope it goes well. I really enjoyed. I know it was a little bit of a cluster F for some guys, but I'm really interested to see.
But you know what? I've been following modified racing forever. It's always a little bit of a cluster F the first time they go to a racetrack. Now it's their second time. These guys will have it figured out more, and it'll be a much better race.
It should be, but it's still a tight racetrack. So
still a tight racetrack.
I mean, it still will have its rough moments. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of contact, but I mean, that's what I look for in a good race. You don't need to wreck somebody, but some contact is exciting. That was fun. Now, King of the Green, they finally got that.
Pulling up I just want to talk about the modified tour schedule.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good. The only disappointing thing on the modified tour schedule is when we had Timmy Solomino on last week, he heard the holdup of them releasing the schedule was they were trying to get Richmond on the schedule, which would have been awesome. Unfortunately, I don't see that race on here for this year for 2020. It starts out March 21st at South Boston Speedway in South Boston, Virginia. April 5th, Thompson Speedway. April 26th, Stafford Motor Speedway. May 8th, Martinsville. They're returning to Martinsville. That's a great racetrack for modifieds.
Right.
May May 23rd, they're returning to Jennerstown Speedway in Western Pennsylvania, which is another great racetrack for modifieds. June 6th is Seekonk. June 20th is Riverhead. July 11th is Wall Stadium Speedway, Wall, New Jersey. July 18th, New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Here's a tough one. Tough one, but a cool one. July 31st, Iowa Speedway. It's the furthest west the modified tour has ever gone. But once they get out there, a 7/8 mile track with a modified on it, it's going to be an awesome, awesome race. Then they come back August 7th to Stafford Motor Speedway. Wednesday, August 19th, Thompson Speedway. They're back September 5th at Oswego Speedway. That's the Big Bud Classic weekend with the super modifieds. September 12th is New Hampshire again. That's usually the Musket 250 race. September 19th, Riverhead. September 27th, Stafford Motor Speedway. And they close out the 17 race schedule October 11th at Thompson Speedway at Thompson, Connecticut. Pretty good schedule, 17 races. I would have liked a little bit longer schedule, but cool thing about a modified is you can be a NASCAR modified tour driver, run their 17 races. You have a modified, you can go to all these open shows, these big paying shows. So if 17 races is enough for you, you run the whole tour, and that's enough racing for you. If you need more racing, you just take your modified and go race somewhere else.
Now, quick question for you regarding the whole Iowa thing. Do you think some teams that's just gonna be too far for them, or
it'll be one of those deals where everybody's gonna see where they're at in the points. If they're in top 15, top 10 in points, I know NASCAR gives you a little extra money if you're in the top 15 in points. If you make they got like some deal, like if you make every single race, they give you an extra $500. It's pretty much tow money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there might be teams that go out there so they don't lose that $500. But do you spend $2,000 to keep the $500? You know what I'm saying? But I think people will go out there only because it's a cool track. It's a beautiful racetrack.
Cool track, and it's something different, so you don't know what's going to happen.
I looked at it from here. It's 16 hours, but so is New Smyrna. A lot of these teams travel down to New Smyrna, but the thing is, they go down to New Smyrna and they get to race 5 times, not just once. We'll see. It's with the Xfinity Series, so it's going to be a high-profile race. I think they'll make the trip out there. Sure, why not? Will every team make the trip out there? No, they'll lose a few.
Okay, so you probably about an average field then.
Yeah, they're not going to have the 40 cars like we do like they did at the last race at Thompson.
Right.
But they'll have their 25 to 30. Hey, it's more than the K&N cars are bringing anywhere,
Wow. All right. Well, we're going to see where
well, my brother says he's already calling sick out for that race.
He doesn't know what kind of food they have there.
Hey, we might have to send him out there and try the corn chowder out there or something. He might have to go.
All right. So we already talked about Scott at Bethel. I was going to move on to actually Bridgeport saying.
Oh, you want me to talk more about Bethel? An hour and a half was enough.
No, that's enough for this episode. I'm going to run out of space on the freaking memory card. The Bridgeport saying goodbye to the 5/8.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's kind of, for me, if it's there, I mean, you can run your other. They have 3 tracks: the 5/8, the 3/8, and the quarter. And I mean, why not keep it and then save it for special events or something?
Yeah. But I tell you what, they're copying their game plan is to copy a track called Lawrenceburg out in Indiana.
Okay.
And I looked that track up. Man, that track's awesome.
Yeah.
So who knows? Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think that anybody really complained about it. They just thought it was a badass track and that was it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure why get rid of it if it ain't broke.
This is just me thinking outside the box. One thing I learned about all these years in racing, we went to a track down in Virginia. It's called Langley Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
They kept telling me it was 0.4 of a mile, right? But meanwhile, I'm running the same gear when I ran like a half mile, and it felt like it was bigger than 4/10, and then I got wind. The reason these tracks call them 4/10 mile tracks or half-mile tracks is for insurance reason. Once you go over a half-mile racetrack, your insurance gets real expensive. So maybe the 5/8 mile and insurance standpoint at Bridgeport was getting out of hand, so they got to go to a smaller track. I don't know. It's just a guess. Oh, and another thing we always talk about on this show is how they're right-sizing the grandstands, and we always talk about, why don't they at least leave the grandstands up? Why even take them down? You can cover them up or whatever. But now that Dover's taking a bunch of stands out, I heard in Delaware that they get taxed on per seat that the venue is, not the tickets they sell. So if you have a 150,000 seat venue, you get taxed for a 150,000 seat venue. If you sell 50,000 tickets, you still get taxed for the 150,000 seat venue. So that's why they take them out, so they don't get taxed on them. The entertainment at this racetrack. So there's one of the reasons.
All right. Let's see what else we have. King of the Green. Let's talk about that for a minute. Then we'll move on to the quarter midget.
I don't know much about it. I know it ran late. And man, what a day of racing up there! They had the King of the Green. They had all those races that were supposed to be a couple of weeks ago. It got rained out twice. The third time was a charm. They had good weather up there. They got it in. And then after they got all that done, they had enduro racing. After that, they were going to use that new horseshoe that they put in. And like Mike was saying from Bethel earlier in the podcast. A lot of those guys that raced at Evergreen and the Enduros came to Bethel the next day. So when they got up there, I said, hey, did you guys run the horseshoe last night? They're like, no, we were all for it. It was flooded out from the rains the day before, but they did pump it out and got it dried off for them to use it. But they said the problem was by the time it was time to race, it was real dark out and there was no lighting in there for the horseshoe. Okay. So they didn't use the horseshoe. They raced on the traditional oval at Evergreen in the Enduro race.
At that point, I mean, you're just trying to get the race in.
Yeah, it's getting cold, dark. Been there all day. But go ahead, hit us with the top 10 if you have it for the Bethel, the Evergreen King of the Green race.
Okay, so let's start with the four-cylinder Enduro. We'll just do top 10s because I got a bunch here. So the four-cylinder Enduro, Harry O'Neill, followed by Devin Gibson, John Eyre, Ray Kennedy, Luke Hoffner, Jason Benzoni, Michael I can't even pronounce it. Mudge, I don't know. Stephen Brooks, Paul Mercante, and Jeff Ackerman. The Legends race, Daniel Carter, Mike Weddell, Brad Lowmaster, Tanner Jones, Patrick DeBrois, Riley O'Keefe, Mike Benton, Alec Andrex, Charlie Hodge, and Joey Braun. The Junior four-cylinders, Micah, sorry. Emily Ryan, Tommy Flanagan, Elliot Tito, and Savannah Romig. The Bandoleros, we had Caitlin Stradley, Justin Teresak, and Connor Weddell. The Evergreen Modifieds, Matt Hirschman gets the win, Paul Hartwig Jr. in second. Austin Beers, Roger Koss, Joe DeGracia, Dave Kozlowski, Bobby Jones, Mike Pollock, Nick Baer, and Peter Latanzio.
But that race was actually 2 weeks ago. That one you just read off.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just trying to get through all of them. I got five divisions left. Yeah.
Okay.
They actually got everything posted here, which is kind of rare. So.
All right, so you're doing the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. The factory stocks: Stephanie Moyer, Mitch Hawk, Scott Sipe. Oh, I haven't seen that name in a while.
Yeah, he raced with us in the Enduro days. Remember, Josh?
Yeah. Oh, I remember him. That 88 car, right?
Yep.
Blaine Barry, Teresa Collins in fifth place.
Yeah, she had a good run up there. I was glad to hear that. Chris
Trombauer, Andrew McConsky, Genevieve Yamelski, Bob Wright, and Keith Frankenfeld. The four cylinders, TJ Capish, another Enduro guy, Danny Cassioli, Jay Canor, Joe Warren, Jake Oswald, Jake Jones, Travis Solomon, Jimmy Eyre, Trisha Connolly, Steve Kreitzer. The late models, Jared Hayes, Mike Sweeney, Steve Schultz, Jarrett Johnson, Joe Beretta, John Vullo Jr., Kyle Harvell, Chola Shea, Jared Barclay, and Frankie Althouse. The street stocks, Brock Brown, Todd Honor, Ken Ernie, Johnny Bennett, John Moser, Brian Halecki, Jillian Long, Josh Mooney, Mike Pollack, and Scott Adams. Now for the Tour Modifieds, Roger Koch gets the win over Matt Hirschman, followed by Austin Kochanash, Chuck Hosfeld, Roger Turbush, Earl Pauls, Jonathan Mandato, John Markovic, Blake Barney gets ninth, and Ed McCarthy gets 10th. They had 27 cars start the race. There were 3 did not qualify. Chris Risdale, Glenn Slocum, and Buddy Miller did not make the race.
But I think they started them all, though. I think the 3 that you mentioned had other problems weren't able to race. I know that Chris Risdale, he wrecked really, really bad.
Was that a 5 car?
A number 1 or something like
that.
5
or something like that.
Yeah, that thing was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. That was in a practice crash, I believe.
So I'm guessing they didn't leave 2 cars out. I'm pretty sure they weren't able to race, but I'm not 100% sure about that because, I mean, even for them to start 27's a lot. They usually start 20 to 24 at most. So it's almost like they put everybody into the race. And I'm just assuming and guessing that the 3 cars that you mentioned that did not qualify weren't available to race because they had damage or something breaking their cars.
Yeah, something broke while during practice or whatnot. Okay, now moving on.
I just want to mention real quick, you mentioned the name in the Enduro, he finished 3rd or something like that. It was Jeff Ackerman. He also finished 3rd at Bethel on Sunday. The name Jeff Ackerman sticks out to me because I became friends with him. Not only does he race Enduros, but his family owns a beautiful campground on the Delaware River. It's called Cherry Stone Campground. Driftstone, not Cherry Stone. Cherry Stone's down. Cherry Stone's another beautiful campground. That's down by the Bay Bridge Tunnel going down to Virginia, down that way. It's on the Chesapeake Bay. That's a beautiful one. He owns Driftstone Campground on the Delaware River. What a beautiful campground. Me and Nancy have camped there a few times, and we've always let Jeff know that we were coming there. And then whenever I see him at an Enduro, I get to talk to him for a little bit. So if you ever go camping in the Pocono area, man, definitely check out Driftstone Campground. It's beautiful.
All right. I'll take a look.
But they're only open. It's weird. They close real early. They close like right after Labor Day. And I said, me and him were just talking at the campground one time, and his parents own it. His family's owned this campground forever, and he runs it and works it. And I said, Jeff, it's kind of weird that you guys closed the campground so early up here, because September and October when the leaves are changing color in the Poconos, it's beautiful up there. He's like, don't give him any ideas. He's like, that's when I go racing. Because he's so busy in the summer, he can't race because he's working the campground. But as soon as that campground closes down, he starts racing. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, honestly, I wish a lot of the campgrounds I go to would stay open through November. Because that's when it finally starts to cool off, it seems, lately.
Yeah.
So the Little Wall, the quarter midgets, had their Turkey Derby this past weekend, and it looks like they had a lot of racing going on here. So I'm going to run through the results for all the quarter midgets, and then we'll wrap things up. So the senior Honda B main, Gianni Monteleone, Thomas Schwarz, Jackson Lukex, Justin Farris, Gian Conti, Jackson Herr, and Shannon Schwarz. The blue rookie A main, Bo Loesch, Nick McMinn, Casey Janey, Matthew Orlick, Dexter Niemi. The junior animal A main, Zeke Burgundy, Keegan Stratton, Chris Buffalino, Anthony Liberto, Jack McMinn, and Anthony Kane. The senior the senior animal A main. I was looking at 2 different things at once there. Jackson White, Ryan Coulthau, R.J. Lighton, Thomas Schwarz, and Brandon Sullivan. The UNR animal A main, Brady Cordova, Jared Kreider, Cody Cordova, Chase Johnson, and Ryan McConnell. The junior Honda A main, Zeke Burgundy, Anthony Liberto, Anthony Kane, Chris Buffalino, Aubrey Bain, Mason White, Jack McMinn, Cole Ferris, Jake Mullen, and Ryan Patterson. The senior Honda A main, Jackson White, Kipton Stratton, unless that was supposed to be Keegan Stratton again, but it looks like the keyboard might have bit somebody here. Brandon Sullivan, Gianni Monteleone, R.J. Dayton, Jackson Lucas, Jojo Leonardo, Braden Janey, Justin Farris, Thomas Schwartz, the heavy Honda A-Main, Ryan Boyd, Chase Johnson, Cody Cordova, Brady Cordova, Zach Leonardo, James Roselli, Justin Emmons, Kurt Lester, Ted Olsvisky, Zachary Cordova, Abby Witter. The the LT 160 or the light 160 A-Main, Kipton Stratton, Jackson White, Ryan Coulthau, Thomas Schwartz, Brandon Sullivan, R.J. Dayton, Jojo Leonardo, Gia Conti, Jackson Herr. The heavy 160 A-Main, Zach Leonardo, Cody Cordova, Ryan McConnell, Ted Olfsky, Justin Emmons, James Roselli, Chase Johnson, Craig Delarocco, Kurt Lester, Abby Witter, and Zachary Cordova. The heavy World Formula A-Main, Jackson White, Ryan Coulthau, Jared Kreider, Chase Johnson, Ryan McConnell, Craig Delarocco, Kurt Lester, Cody Cordova, and Zachary Cordova. The Mom A-Main, Jamie White, Candice Olfsky, Alicia Liberto, Charmaine Larkin, Wendy Cordova, and Lisa Taratino. The retired drivers from A-Main 1, Jared Kreider, Cole Mullen, Emily Witter, Sean Alex Lukix, and Ronnie Mullen. Retired drivers A-Main 2, Cole Mullen, Jared Kreider, Emily Witter, Sean Brittany Muha, Ronnie Mullen, and Cassandra Olsky. So that wraps up all the Turkey Derby stuff for the quarter midgets. And we have a few things that we'll talk about next week because the show is running awfully long at this point. Scott likes to make record-length shows. Scott, is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Nah, man, I'm good. I think we'll even skip what have we learned today, but man, what a great show, though.
I have a couple things for that.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to go first.
I just learned the show went really, really long, and we got an early start, and thank God we did.
I agree. So today I learned that a well driller named Wells built Bethel Speedway.
I caught that. He's got a perfect name for what he does.
I learned that Bethel is a smooth track. I learned that Pine Brook Speedway is now a Home Depot, while Flemington is a Lowe's.
Yeah, that's true.
I learned that Scott is now the Iron Man at Bethel, and I learned that Scott's dad always liked his ex. So, just a little bit of fun. But, I want to thank Mike Hager for joining us earlier. That was a really fantastic interview. And
yeah, we got to get him back on, man. He's a wealth of knowledge in that area. It was good to talk to him.
But whenever we have him on,
I wanted to ask him if he ever drove, too. It started running along. And another thing, too, this year I wanted to ask him about, but we were running along, was they showed up with a home-built modified this year, and I saw it on Facebook, and it said they've been building it for a very long time, and they finally finished it, and it was painted just like the street stock. I want to talk a little bit about that car he had, but we didn't get a chance to, so when we get it back on, we'll talk about that car. We just kept talking and talking. Before we know, we were an hour and a half in. But yeah, my brother wasn't able to make it this week. He has some other stuff going on, so hopefully he'll be back next weekend. The only reason I know of this weekend locally is Bridgeport. Go see the last race on the 5/8 mile.
Yeah,
go check it out. I think they're racing all weekend down there. So yeah, definitely go down there and check that out. And so that wraps up episode 157 of the RPM podcast. And thanks for joining us. Go to Bridgeport.
Go to Bridgeport.